Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sacred Remembering Podcast episode 170. I am Sarah Poet. It is so good to be here with you today. Today's episode is going to be focusing on false structures, false electrics. This is this new information that I've been remembering through my own soul process. And if you are listening at sarahpoet.podcast, or if you are listening on Apple or Spotify or where you stream this podcast, you are going to get in the audio version a special transmission that came from my Birthing Upward workshop last Saturday, December 7th. And this is a transmission and an activation about the new electrics, the true electrics. So if you are listening to the audio, you are going to get that. If you are watching the video right now, then I encourage you to go find that longer version of this podcast and sit down for an activation into new energetics. So this podcast is called Sacred Remembering because we humans, women often, are listening to this podcast on this journey of remembering and remembering the truths that have been covered up, remembering this ancient information that comes from our own soul and bringing these rememberings into modern life. It is a very brave and very important thing to do. I am very frequently saying that I truly, truly believe that the answers to where we are going currently lie inside of modern women. I believe that wholeheartedly. And my evidence for that is very personal. Like the things that I know and that I remember now, when I was a high achieving school principal, following all the rules, I yearned for more. I had no idea that my soul could access the things that it accesses. So walking this journey of sacred remembering, I just love to give you all so much support because, I mean, if you've been listening to any of the last episodes, I've been airing my imperfections, and you know that this journey is like very real. So, this to say, like, I'm a mom, I'm a woman, I have my 3D struggles sometimes. Sometimes it's super blissful. And at the same time, I'm remembering these, you could say they're a combination of ancient codes, ancient information, and like, how is it applicable to life on earth right now? Well, this is what's really exciting because we came with these codes, with this information inside of us, and it's going to be opening and birthing as the earth needs it. So even as we go through our struggles, even as we are like, what the heck, where's the payoff, all of that, like there really is a reason. It's almost like a little time capsule inside of us where, we can think like, oh my gosh, where is the answer? Well, probably inside of us. It's probably in there waiting for us to kind of realize. And this is how I feel about these topics that I'm bringing forward now. Over the last year or so, I have been talking about re-entering the crystal spiral of creation, the rightful energetics of creation, aligning our lives to that. I've been talking for years about like, how do we get out of patriarchy? How do we get out of these like patriarchal energetics? And so that has been the exploration. And then there's like more and more information that comes through. So I began channeling about the crystal spiral on the podcast about a year ago, November of 2023. Then I was talking a lot about this blue rose. This blue rose came, and the blue rose was sharing these codes with me about the holy daughter of creation, really helping me to repattern Holy Mother, Holy Father, and provision, and how the mother really answers need and responds to innocence. Like, it was so deeply healing for me to receive those codes. I've talked about it a bit on the Sacred Remembering podcast, but there's a whole little course and activation inside the Sacred Remembering community, the monthly membership that goes with this podcast. So you can go there to get those activations about the Holy Daughter and the Blue Rose and Sarah, the daughter of creation. So you may know that I have just so deeply and closely walked this relationship with Yeshua, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene on my sacred remembering path. And then their holy daughter, whose name I share, Sarah, is said to bring these blue rose codes to the planet right now. So I began spontaneously channeling those. And the blue rose was showing me that there's this correction in spin and the spiral of creation. Like, it was going to be correcting the energetic flow so that it would become more rightful, more regenerative in the planet. And it corresponds with the grid architectures in both the planet and in us. So then in like June, July, I started seeing the blue rose really get more robust, and it was turning in the, like creational direction. And I saw a lot of water, and it was like, I was calling it torrents of water. And these torrents of water that were moving with this creational force of the blue rose. And I was seeing the blue rose, it kind of sits on the planet, it kind of sits at this root base level of our energy architecture, corresponding to the planetary architecture. And I was saying, oh my gosh, it is snapping false structures. It is snapping false structures. And I was seeing buildings just snap like toothpicks, y'all. I was visioning this, channeling this, thinking absolutely that I was speaking in metaphor. I literally had no, like, I did not even imagine that it was anywhere near a possibility that I was seeing something that was actually going to occur. And so if you have been listening to the previous few episodes of this podcast, I have also shared some of this sprinkled into some of those episodes as well. But I'm leading up to today's topic and recapping this for us. Then, as we know, in late September, this massive storm, torrents of water, flood waters came into this region where I live, this Asheville, North Carolina region that I love so much, and just collapsed so many buildings, so many houses, so many business structures, like caused a lot of damage, and also is bringing a lot of possibility and I'm mainly, the whole time, the whole process, I've been mainly reading this energetically in the field, in the energy field. And this is definitely not the first time that I am acquainted with the energy of the land in these mountains. It's kind of what I've been doing for the last 4 years or so, since this whole activation called Heartland kind of downloaded into me. Heartland, it is worth noting, is about the regenerative energetics of the feminine and about the reconstruction of the energy currents that carry the feminine energy through the earth. So these diagonal ley lines and this diamond heart grid network. So that connects into these new electrics that hopefully I remember to bring that full circle later, but just in case I don't, just you can remember that. Right. So there's all of these energetics that I was tracking with the storm that had to do obviously with water and with the soil particles and then the energetics of feminine and masculine and the structures. So all of these new currents of feminine and masculine, these new earth currents, this regenerative current, anything that we want to call into our lives from this point forward, because as women, we've run the gamut of depletion and trying to fit into a man's world and all that stuff, right? So right now, in these wholly new possibilities, we want to remember that these new energetics travel on the water. New energetics travel on the water. The mother of creation, which is around us in every single way, carries these waters. Now, because I forgot to say it before, some of the words that I'm using in this podcast, some of the words that I use anywhere I speak, are speaking to your soul. So when I say blue rose on the surface of the earth, your logical mind be like, what is she talking about? And then there's a soul remembrance or a soul activation. And that's what I want to invite you into. So listen to this with your soul and be in curiosity and allow the aspects of what I say to kind of work and percolate. And believe me, this may percolate for years. These aspects came to me very slowly and they percolate for years. I can't even claim to be finished remembering or learning about these things. And I can't claim to be giving you a full picture because I'm just one woman. This is why I love getting together with other women and visioning together, because it's like I'll get some of the pieces, then other women will get other pieces, and we will put these things together and like literally track the pulse of how the energetics are changing on the planet. So that's why sacred remembering is important, right? That's why it's really important to break out of false structures, which I'm getting to right now. So I want to bring this conversation to like the conscious awareness of women and how we use our energy and how we use our energy inside of existing structures and in relation to existing models of what we would call the masculine. So there are many, many ways that I could talk about the conscious evolution of feminine and masculine and the way these come back together. And today I will just be mentioning like a few. Okay. So let's talk about false structures, what they are, and how women's energy, life force, all of our resources, how they relate to false structures. And I'll just start with the spoiler alert that most all structures are what I'm calling false structures. So I'm going real meta here right now. So false structures are any structure of consciousness, of business, a structure as far as even like the way things are built, like buildings and systems. Let's just go with those kinds of three. Like, so relational, organizational systems. So it could be really, really big, like the education system, the financial system. It could be the structure for which we work in a workplace or the structure for which we structure our own business. The way we structure our own time management and work management. Okay. So we are so used to dealing with false structures that it couldn't even, it may be that it doesn't even dawn on us, like, how the fuck do I get out of this? Okay. So false structures, here are three descriptors, criteria. They run on finite energetics. So that essentially means that there are limited options and we're going to feel tired. Okay. So they run on finite energetics. They're inherently extractive to something. So again, there's going to be tiredness and depletion, something's part. Like, so it may grow financially, but maybe it uses a lot of human and environmental resources in the process, right? So it's a little sacrificial in nature. That's a false structure. And then there are these false electrics. Okay, false electrics. So we see this with, hierarchical structures, structures that have power differentials, masculine, feminine imbalance. Like, you can hear that I'm kind of talking about the history of the world, right? The history of the world as we have known it in the structures of this current paradigm. So another way to say that could just simply be to say patriarchy is everywhere. Colonialism is everywhere. It's like inside of everything that has been built that we have known. And that's why it's like, this feels so shitty. And I don't want to use my energy in this way anymore. So this is a really good way to tell women if you're inside of a false structure. As a woman, it would be like, it doesn't feel good to give my energy here. Or another tell is, I'm giving my energy here, but it doesn't feel like my energy is amplifying. It feels like it's kind of dull. Like, you have to exert a lot of energy for a certain amount of outcome. It's like, when do things really start to amplify? When do things really start to get really regenerative? You might like work really hard and push a lot and just like sacrifice quality time with your family, sacrifice your own energy, that kind of thing, for a finite outcome. So like for X amount of money, or, or it's like, if you're doing this inside of a workplace, it could be like, wow, I might work here forever in this way, and this is the ceiling for the salary. That's actually why I left education, working for the state, because I never worked in mainstream public schools, but I worked in charter public schools, and it was still on the state scale of teacher payment. And it was like, wow, with 2 master's degrees, this is the cap that I will ever make in this career. And I just was like, why would I agree to a cap on all the money I would ever make? Like, that it did not compute, right? Did not compute. So that's how we know that we're in a false structure. It's a finite game. Okay. All right. So I think what I'd like to do next is talk about false electrics. Okay, this kind of blew my mind. So, like, I'm excited as I start to say this. I'm also like, wow, I'm in the middle of remembering these things. And if you have heard me on most of the podcasts from the last 2 years or something, I don't know, maybe I'm being too hard on myself, but you probably have felt like, whoa, Sarah's really grappling with something. Sarah's really struggling with something. And I was grappling with this like limitation of masculinity that I kept coming up against or kept encountering, right? And we know like so much of my responsibility as well, right? And we hold the imprints of us, or like in us, and we attract in the external world what we're holding inside of us. Yes, all of that, right? And I don't totally buy that whole thing about like women and the resources that we have been able to grow, and like how we've been disrespected and dishonored by men and masculine. I'm not going to blame women for that entirely. I mean, that is so enculturated and in these false structures and like false dynamics of the masculine. So I was encountering this, various examples of shadow masculine, various examples of masculine that, claimed to uphold women and honor women, but like then it was inherently extractive. And it's like, what the fuck, right? So this actually has to do with the electrics and also the components of structure that we have in these false structures. So I now record this podcast on Riverside and it doesn't have a pause button. And this is a moment that it could really use a pause button, because how are you going to do a video? Anyway, just bear with me for a moment. All right, I'm going to talk about this like very common false structure mumbo jumbo that we assign to feminine and masculine, just so you can see a little bit what I'm sharing here. So even in like, places that are supposed to be rather woke about feminine and masculine, you have this story where the masculine is the riverbanks and the feminine is the river. And so that's implying that there's this containment on the part of the masculine, and that's the masculine's job, right, is to contain the feminine. And then the feminine is supposed to flow through the masculine. Now, I think that this is a trauma projection. I think that this is a projection of what we sometimes want the masculine to be. Like, we want the masculine to be very safe and steady and secure. And of course, the rightful conscious masculine would be those things. But the masculine is not containment. This is a huge aspect of the false structure. So, and I've talked about this in various ways on this podcast. If you have a masculine structure and the feminine is only supposed to fit into that, you have a massive limitation. If you have a man who is capable of so much, but he's limited because he's a man, as all humans are limited because we are human, then like you might come up against in relationship, if you are a woman who is in relationship to this man and he's providing structure, he's providing, a salary and provision, and he's paying for things. And then a woman might say, and now I would like us to grow in our emotional awareness and deepen our intimacy. That might challenge the ego structure of what that guy's got going on, right? And so then he might say, I don't know if I want to do that. And then she's like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to rock this structure too much, because like he's paying the bills and paying the mortgage, and I don't have that much income right now. So yeah, I like want these, like, I want to blow feminine and masculine concepts open. I really like want to seek what's actually out there. I want to like really expand, but she doesn't actually expand because there's this false structure. There's this false security. And so with men and masculine in our culture, they had access to the resources through privilege. It's not that only the masculine provides, it's that the masculine had access to resources, financial and otherwise, land, housing, bank accounts, like up until 3 decades ago, a woman had to like have a man co-sign with her. So okay, so this is not the full definition of the masculine. This is an incredibly limited definition of the masculine because it's referencing social constructs and like social dynamics. So sometimes we as humans have a hard time stretching beyond what we see in front of us. And we know that there is more, but then it's like, well, but do I risk these false structural securities that I have in order to, expand? So that's a real life example of like how this comes into play. I know many listeners probably relate to that, right? So let me get a drink of water. So what energetic is really happening, right, is that, or what happens in nature with feminine and masculine, is that the feminine is expansion, and the masculine could hold this electrical current that helps the creation to really expand. This is how things could come into form. If we are both in consciousness, if the feminine and the masculine in any form, be it human, be it energetics, are in consciousness, then there's going to be an expansion with both. There would be no limitation in the potentiality of the structure. Okay, hear me when I say there would be no limitation, because there would be no false, cap on what is possible. So if the false paradigm is built in power structures and false interpretations of masculine and feminine, then we're going to get to like the top of those hierarchies, the top of those power structures. And it's going to be like, well, you can't get this far or cross this cap. Fuck it. That is totally false. That does not even exist in the world that we're creating next. It does not exist in nature. Okay, so speaking in the hypotheticals here. So the feminine is infinite space. The conscious feminine, and the feminine as is carried by the sound currents of Holy Mother's waters, the sonics, the womb waters that are everywhere. These creational spaces, free of obstruction, free of limitation, they're very vast. They're ever expanding, right? So it would be a disservice to talk about the feminine in terms of putting it into a finite structure. We've established that. Okay. So the masculine energetics. All right. So this is what is currently like getting me really excited. This whole topic about the electrics. So I channeled this whole thing about birthing upward 2 years ago, and I've wanted to do a workshop on it. It wasn't until like a month or 6 weeks ago that the green light came on with my soul and creation and everything else. It was like, now host the workshop, right? So I got the download, but then there was like more that needed to come in. So I scheduled the Birthing Upward workshop for December 7th. And especially in the week leading up to December 7th, it was like, like all of these realizations and these like pieces of the puzzle were just coming in very quickly. You can get the recording of that, by the way, that whole 2.5-hour workshop activation recording at sarahpoet.com/shop. And the digital download is there for you. And I go even deeper into the false structures, the false electrics, and then these new electrics. So I had not realized this part about the history of the earth that was actually called the Electric Wars. So there was a ton on this planet, and that it still exists, right? Because really all time exists at one time, which will blow your mind. And it's kind of a mind fuck, but you also kind of know it's true at the same time, right? So that's the heartland it does exist, right? And so when we journey with the heartland, we journey into this place of purely regenerative energetics. That existed once upon a time on Earth. We could also get back there again. We probably are, because love is winning all over the place, actually. So that is the trajectory. Okay. So once upon a time, before there were these galactic wars. Now, yes, I had to live some sacred remembering journey before I realized that there were galactic wars, and that it totally fucking makes sense, actually, as crazy as it sounds. There were these wars where before that we had masculine, feminine harmony. We had a total harmony with the earth and all living creatures. Since prevailed, there was no like, you have to compete for resources. None of that shit existed. And then these like forces came in, really fucked things up, and they hurt the heart, right? So the heart was like, love was attacked. Love was attacked. Then they attacked the mind. Okay. So you started to like doubt love, and then doubt that your thoughts are very creational. That created a lot of fear, and then fear-based thinking. And so that is the perpetuation of essentially hell on earth, because we could have unity on earth, but we're living in what we could say is a fallen paradigm. The fallen paradigm is like a fallen unity architecture, and that fallen paradigm creates the false structures. So like, that's why there's this discomfort and even pain, because that was done to the earth. And you know how it was done to the earth was electrical warfare, which made all the sense in the world to me as I was looking at these false structures. And I just kept getting this like, yeah, but what about the electrics? What about the masculine electrics? Because the masculine electrics that we know, that we relate to, I often see them communicated about as like a golden light, like a yellow light electric of the masculine. I think that this is the false electrics of the false structures. I think that this is some of what we associate with these false stories about what the masculine is. And I won't go into that further, but that involves a lot of evidence from my own visions, right? And my own just path that I trust that, you know, even though there's been a lot of hardship, like I trust that my soul has been on this mission to, you know, like really find this harmony again. Okay. And yeah, I could go into that more, but I'll just leave that simple. So I believe that the feminine and the masculine can come into rightful unity. And in a false paradigm, in a false structural dynamic, a woman could feel like she either has the choice to adapt to, what's the word, like an uncomfortable or like maybe a less than desirable relationship with a man. Like she's got to just be happy with what she can get, right? Or the other way that women have adapted in the false paradigm is, in this like fallen structural paradigm, is to take on false masculine, shadow masculine characteristics and work kind of like a man, but like a man in the industrial patriarchy, in order to secure resources. So I'll say that again. So a woman who is responding to false structures is often going to have this like binary. Again, a false finite, two options. You can fit inside of the false structure and act like you're happy, act like that's enough for you. Or you can try to think that you're escaping that false structure, but really, in order to quote unquote succeed or have the resources, you're probably going to have to work in hyper masculine energetics and deplete your own feminine just to get by. I mean, a lot of people have made a shit ton of money like that, but it's inherently extractive of something, right? So these electrical wars are what caused all this shit. And that just made so much sense to me when I saw it named like that. I was like, of course, the electrics have been fucking with us. All right. So because we can't respond to false electrics. Another way that I saw this described is that in that spin of creation, in the creational spin, and we can call this the Merkaba, and you can find this information on the Ascension Glossary website, Lisa Renee's body of work, which I think is incredible and like a very reliable source based on all of my remembering. And it helps to verify things like I'm sharing here. And so the false electrics, there's actually a false electrical male. There's a false electrical masculine. Another way to say that would be there's a masculine that is like run by the false electric. So when we're talking about false structures, if all structures in creation are made of feminine and masculine, which I would say that they are because all of creation is made up of feminine and masculine, then this masculine that was inserted, the kind of like injected into our field, into our consciousness, into our earth millions of years ago was running on a false electric. It's not the true electric of men masculine. I personally cannot wait until we recover all of this because there's like an upgraded energetic, true electric of the masculine. Now, I'm not totally tracking how that's coming online, but what I am tracking in my own remembrance and what I went deeper into in the Birthing Upward workshop is that the true womb of creation births both the feminine and the masculine. So the feminine and the masculine are coming from the womb of creation, the mother of creation. Okay, great mother, you could say it like that. So it's actually this trinity, and the trinity is very important because if it's just feminine and just masculine, they could kind of bounce off of each other. And that's called that finite, that bi-wave frequency. So at the beginning of my journey, I used to think, well, they're going to get so like harmonic, this feminine and masculine, that they're just going to hold this perfect balance, kind of like a Vesica Pisces, right? Where they're just going to hold this perfect balance and then you're going to be in this perfect balance of feminine and masculine. That's totally fucking not realistic, A. And it's always either or. It's like either or hold the balance, right? So the Vesica Pisces, those two circles with like the oval shape in the middle, that is actually a binary and a finite geometric. I do not advocate for that representation of feminine and masculine. I've told this story, but I almost got the Vesica Pisces on my right forearm just before I did my TEDx on feminine and masculine. Spirit shut that shit down. Like, I was not allowed to get it. I'm really glad that I listened because, again, it was a finite understanding. It was kind of like an intro understanding, maybe idyllic, but okay. So the Trinity, enter the Trinity, right? So feminine and masculine always, this is so beautiful. It's so beautiful when we like get this. They create something. So they make, I'm going to call it a third thing. Okay, so there's a creation that comes from it. We could call that the holy child, like the holy daughter that I was mentioning before, right? So we can say holy mother, holy father, holy child. That's a trinity. And that creates an entirely different energetic, which is regenerative. Okay, we can also, like this creation, right? Mother of creation, womb of creation, births both feminine and masculine. That's a trinity. It's an architecture of a geometry that is life-giving, that is perpetual in nature, regenerative in nature. So, and this is what actual nature, actual creation is built on. It's built on trinity energetics. And this is what is coming from the reclaimed and sovereign womb and our relationship with the womb. Now, I don't want shadow feminine out there just being like yappity yap about the womb and how creational it is and how like no, women, we have to do the work of actually getting the womb actually sovereign to run these energetics through and actually embody it and like to carry this, right? So there are these songs of creation that creation sings. And as you really deepen into your relationship with the feminine and like the clear and like free of distortion, feminine, there are these songs of creation. It is the feminine in creation. You have your own song of creation. It's like how your soul sings as this holy being, holy child on the planet, right? So all of these things are already in you and like so ready to be activated. And you must remember, like we must remember in integrity. It's not a quick thing. It's not like you hear the word and then you automatically like embody it, right? Just like I heard the words about birthing upward 2 years ago. And then 2 years later, I was able to give the transmission and the workshop, and knowing that that's just a piece of it. So the and I'll begin to wrap up here, but the electrics that are born in this way are rightful. They are a different color. They help the song of creation to move forward. Like I see them sometimes like on a river current, this river current of the crystal spiral. That's part of what I went into in the Birthing Upward workshop. Just tuning in because, like, I want to share with you, but there are also some boundaries here energetically to not put like all of it into the world at once, or kind of, you know, like I want to share. And I think these codes are really, really special. Like it's taken me 43 years to arrive here in this space. And so like these are codes. You could use the word codes, although I know that word is kind of misused also, of infinite creation, of remembering the crystalline frequencies that help us to heal all of the above. And these crystalline frequencies, as we strengthen them, as they move through us, through the Earth's currents, they help to restore this diamond grid network on the Earth. So that's what I'm here for. I'm really, really, really enjoying this activation of these new electrics in myself. I'm so, so grateful. And I am like really attuning to how they are going to change how I use my energy and how I work. You know, we are coming into Structure and Flow 2025, y'all. And this is going to be very exciting because we know what we know when we know it, right? 4 years ago, I was mostly saying that structure is masculine, feminine is flow. Now we know that it's all both and there are many feminine structures. I think I did a podcast about that this year. And also it's, you know, these beautiful new electrics that are really helping this flow of these creational currents move through our lives. So I would love to deliver more activations in this energy, in these quantum codes, and these just yeah, like it's activating my cells, my behavior, and yes, my thoughts. It's healing fear, it's healing emotions within me. And so I would love to share more with you in Structure and Flow. That is one place. We start on January 15th. It is a 12-week system and planner, and really getting into such close and right relationship with your feminine resources, your time, your energy, your life force, how you use your energy. And we track that and we journal. We meet in women's community and reflect. And, you know, we completely upgrade our relationship with time and energy. I think that this year is going to be the best yet. I know that that's true. The best Structure and Flow annual group yet. And, you know, one alum talked to me about coming back, and she said, you know, this is really important as we kind of enter into this 45D potential actually on the planet right now, and our relationship with time and our ability to kind of bend time. And so I will say that 100% when we activate these new electrics within us, our relationship with time changes. I can't totally explain that with my mind because very nonlinear, but I am feeling it and experiencing it. It is an entirely new upgrade for our energy and our potential as women and how we use our energy. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to like throw in this bonus right here, right now, spontaneously, that if you sign up for Structure and Flow 2025 starting January 15th, as soon as you do, I will send you the link for Birthing Upwards so that you can watch the full transmission and start to get activated in those new electrics and these diamond codes prior to the start date. Along with Structure and Flow, you also get 3 months free of the Sacred Remembering Community, which I can't do super quick math, but I think it's like $180 value. So this is very exciting. This is very, very exciting. Thank you for bearing with me while I did the video and the audio recordings together. I am making every intention to get more onto YouTube. And again, if you're listening to this on audio, the next track that I'm going to tack on here is an energy activation from Birthing Upward to activate you in these new electrics. Now, what's an activation, right? An activation would be activate, like to turn it on. And then in the days and weeks to come, just notice, or maybe go back into the meditation in the same way, to notice more, right? So this is where I am. Like, this is 5 days post Birthing Upward as I'm recording this. And every day I'm getting more information because the activation has happened. Okay. So enjoy this gift at the end of this recording. And I very much recommend that you only listen to it when you can really be present with yourself, when you have the 45 minutes or so to really slow down and do nothing else other than focus on this if your soul is a yes to it. So thank you for being here. If you are enjoying what I am putting out, I ask you to please talk about it. Please recommend it. Recommend these channels. SarahPoet.com has the podcast. Please sign up for my newsletter. I put a lot of heart and soul into my newsletter on my website. And yeah, let's build like women in community that know about these things. So reach out anytime, and I will be back for another episode very soon.